Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When Garrett Blaine left his job to build his dream home in the Arizona desert, he expected heat, dust, maybe a snake or two, not a power-hungry HOA queen waging war with clipboards, lies, and fire, but she picked the wrong man to mess with. Welcome to the battle for freedom. You know what's funny? When I packed up my life and moved to Arizona to build my dream house, I thought the biggest battle I'd face would be the heat. Or maybe rattlesnakes. I didn't expect it to be a bleach blonde dictator in yoga pants with a clipboard. After 15 years working as a county architectural inspector, I'd seen enough stucco nightmares and fake Tuscan villas to last me a lifetime. I wanted freedom. Real freedom, the kind you can only get when no one tells you what shade of beige your front door has to be. So when I found a 2-acre plot of land just outside the boundary lines of Sun Mesa Estates, a high-end HOA community with more rules than a prison manual, I bought it in cash and slept like a baby that night. It was perfect. The land was clean, undeveloped, legally zoned, and most importantly, 100% not under HOA jurisdiction. I designed everything myself. The house would be a minimalist modern ranch. Steel framing, poured concrete walls in light gray, flat roof with solar panels, and floor-to-ceiling glass on the west side to catch the sunset. My wife, Julia, loved it. Our teenage son, Mason, couldn't care less as long as he got to pick his bedroom. Every single permit was squared away, every corner of the property surveyed and staked. This wasn't just some pipe dream, it was precision execution. The first week of construction went smooth. The crew I hired knew their stuff, and I kept a close eye without hovering. That's when she showed up. On day 6, just as the cement trucks rolled in to pour the foundation, I spotted her across the property line, a woman in her 50s with platinum blonde hair that probably hadn't seen its natural color since Clinton was in office. She wore white sneakers so clean I'm convinced they'd never touched dirt, and she held a thick binder under her arm like it was the Constitution. "Excuse me," she called out, waving like I was her grandson caught shoplifting. I sighed, wiped the sweat off my brow. I knew who she was before she even opened her mouth. "Karen Loring," she said, strutting across the line like she owned the place. "President of the Sun Mesa Estates HOA." Of course she was. "Garrett Blaine," I replied, not offering a handshake. She didn't take the hint. "I wanted to talk to you about the construction. We noticed the foundation layout. And frankly, it's very disruptive to the aesthetic harmony of the area." I blinked at her. "You noticed?" "Yes. The gray concrete, the flat roof lines, they're not compliant with our community design standards. And we typically don't approve builds without shingle roofing and earth-tone stucco finishes. I brought a copy of our architectural guidelines if you'd like to review them before things go too far." I nearly laughed. "That's generous. But I'm not part of your HOA." She gave me a tight-lipped smile that screamed Botox and litigation. "Not yet. You're adjacent. The board has discussed the possibility of including neighboring properties into our covenant. Future expansion. Proactive zoning alignment." "I didn't buy this land to follow anyone's playbook but my own," I said, crossing my arms. "You don't have jurisdiction over me. Not now. Not ever." "Well," she said, looking around the site like she'd just walked into a crime scene, "we like to think of our community as inclusive, and people who live near us should respect our standards, even if they're not official members. It's about preserving value. I have permits. I have surveys. I have a goddamn notarized deed that says this land is mine and it's not under any association. I suggest you go back to your board and let them know that." She tilted her head like a confused parrot. "So, you're refusing to cooperate?" "I'm refusing to submit." She didn't like that. Her lips pressed into a line so thin it could have sliced sheet metal. Without another word, she turned on her heel and walked back across the property line, binder hugged tightly to her chest like she was trying to keep the HOA commandments from flying away. I watched her go, then signaled the crew to keep pouring. As the cement spread, a strange calm settled over me. The house was real now, not just blueprints or dreams. It was becoming. And nothing was going to stop it. That night, I double-checked the perimeter cameras. All were working. I set up backups on a secure server just in case. Something about the way she said "not yet" made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I'd built dozens of houses for clients over the years, fought through permit battles, zoning nightmares, contractor mistakes, and even floodplain regulations. But this time, It was personal. This was my land. And if some bored suburban tyrant thought she could intimidate me into tearing down my dream, one HOA pamphlet at a time, well, she was about to learn what happens when you poke the wrong damn bear. I don't usually wake up before the sun unless there's a damn good reason. Coffee, earthquake, or fire. That morning, it was the sound of tires on gravel and two distinct car doors slamming in sync. Then the third sound, a sharp knock on metal. Repeated, firm. Impatient, I rolled out of bed, pulled on a shirt, and stepped onto the porch in my boots. The air still had that crisp chill, the kind you get before the desert burns it off by 10. Two sheriff's deputies were standing at the edge of my driveway, one with a clipboard, the other already scanning the lot. Their patrol SUV idled behind them, hazard lights blinking like a warning. "Morning," I said, squinting at them. "Can I help you?" "Sir, we received a call regarding a possible illegal construction and property dispute at this location," said the taller one, Deputy Rios. Professional, not rude, but very much in I just want the facts mode. "Who called it in?" I asked, though I already had a pretty solid guess. He didn't answer that. "Are you the owner of this property?" "I am. Garrett Blaine. I have identification inside and full documentation for the project. Everything here is permitted, surveyed, and signed off by the county." Rios nodded. "We'd like to take a look. We were told this might be a safety hazard and that you may be building outside your legal boundary." I exhaled slowly. "Sure. Let me grab the paperwork." As I turned to walk inside, I spotted her. Karen, standing at the far edge of her property, arms folded across her chest like she was watching a public execution. She didn't wave this time. She smiled, subtle, cold, like a person watching a chess move land exactly where they planned. I came back with a thick accordion folder and laid it open on the hood of the cruiser. Rios flipped through every page while his partner, Deputy Hayes, examined the perimeter and snapped a few photos of the site. I handed them the notarized deed, the building permit stamped by the county, and a copy of the zoning map with my parcel highlighted, very much not in HOA territory. "I'm not sure what story you were told," I said, keeping my voice even, "but this land is mine, always has been. Everything you see here is above board." Rios nodded slowly, already softening. "Looks like it. The complaint mentioned some map discrepancies, but these documents are clear. And the complaint came from—" He hesitated. "Let's just say your neighbor was concerned. She was also concerned about my choice of roofing materials and architectural freedom." Hayes returned from the edge of the lot, tucking his phone into his vest. "Nothing here looks out of place. Lot markers are solid, no encroachment, no safety violations." Karen had walked closer now, pretending to stretch her legs like this was just a casual morning constitutional. She stopped a few feet away and called out loud enough for everyone to hear, "Are they citing you, Mr. Blaine?" "Nope," I replied. "They're admiring the quality of my documentation." She tilted her head. "You're still not cooperating with the community guidelines, you know. You may not be in the HOA now, but we're working on inclusionary amendments. I look forward to burning them." Hayes smirked. Rios closed the folder and handed it back. "Everything appears legal, Mr. Blaine. We'll note this call and the outcome in our system. If you receive further harassment, feel free to file a report." "Can I file one now?" He looked at Karen, then back at me. "You'd need to come into the station, but yes, you can report a false 911 claim if you believe the call was knowingly baseless." I nodded. Believe me, it was. They left without incident. Karen stayed rooted in place like she wanted one last chance to deliver a passive-aggressive blessing. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I walked back inside and locked my gate behind me. By 9 that morning, I'd already downloaded the footage from every security camera, labeled it by time code, and uploaded it to a secure drive. I filled out a preliminary complaint form online and scheduled a visit with the sheriff's office later that week. And just for fun, I printed out a color copy of the HOA boundaries, highlighted in bright neon pink, and taped it to the inside of my front window, visible from Karen's patio. That afternoon, a new sign appeared at the edge of her property. Handwritten, cheap cardboard on a stake. Community standards matter. If it was meant to intimidate me, it failed. If anything, it confirmed what I already knew. She wasn't just being neighborly. This was a campaign. She wanted me out, or tamed, or both. She picked the wrong guy. The next wave didn't come through police lights or sirens. It came through paper, thin, glossy, mass-printed paper that started appearing in mailboxes around the neighborhood like junk mail from hell. I found out about it when my crew lead, Javier, handed me a folded trifold brochure while we were unloading steel beams. "You, made the newsletter," he said. I unfolded it. At the top, in oversized, elegant serif letters, Sun Mesa Estates. Community alert. Below that, a photo of my construction site. Not flattering. Taken right after a cement truck sprayed mud everywhere. Beneath it, in bold red font, unapproved construction endangers community value. I blinked slowly. You've got to be kidding me. It got worse. Next page. The board has initiated the process of expanding HOA boundaries to include adjacent parcels for unified standards. And there it was. A map. My lot, my legally surveyed, deed-secured land, was now colored the same pastel beige as the HOA, as if someone had reached into Photoshop and dragged a paint bucket tool over it. Javier whistled. They can do that? No, they absolutely cannot do that. But the part that stopped me cold was the footer. Residents have already expressed overwhelming support. Survey results attached. Survey results. Overwhelming support. I traced the fine print at the bottom, squinting. I didn't need my inspector background to understand what I was looking at. The survey was a joke. A tiny checkbox question. Do you support continued neighborhood improvements? Then below that, microscopic text. By signing, you agree to delegate decision authority regarding neighborhood expansion to the HOA board. So that's how she did it. Not a vote, not a motion, a trap. I could practically hear Karen's smug voice narrating it. They signed. It's legally binding. We didn't force anything. I spent the next hour pacing the site while my brain ran at a speed that would have violated local noise ordinances. The survey wasn't just deceitful. It was an attempt to fabricate jurisdiction, which meant she was escalating. Fine. So would I. I marched into my office trailer, fired up my workstation, and pulled up the county land records. Every property modification requires a filing, time-stamped and public. If Karen had actually submitted a boundary expansion, I'd see a fingerprint, a document, something, nothing, clean as a nun's browser history. So she wasn't filing legally. She was posturing. Next step, find the residents who supported her survey. I grabbed my keys and walked the 2 blocks into Sun Mesa Estates. Their streets were identical. Manicured lawns, identical stucco, identical shade of soul-destroying beige. I rang 3 doors before someone answered. A man in his 70s opened the door. Oxygen tube looped over his ears. He looked exhausted, confused, and entirely uninterested in HOA politics. I held up the brochure. Did you sign this? He squinted. Oh, that thing. The lady said it was just permission to plant more desert shrubs near the entrance. His voice dropped. I didn't agree to anything else. That lady could only be Karen. 2 more houses said the same thing. Nobody knew what they'd signed. Nobody knew they had voted to expand the HOA. That night, after Julia and Mason were asleep, I sat at my drafting table and started assembling my counteroffensive. I scanned the survey, highlighted the deceptive language, pulled screenshots of the original county map showing my parcel clearly outside HOA boundaries, and overlaid it with Karen's forged one. Side by side, the manipulation was comically obvious. The next morning, I drafted a formal notice of intent to pursue legal action for attempted boundary fraud and mailed it to the HOA registered address, certified with delivery confirmation. Then I emailed a copy to the county zoning office and CC'd the general counsel of the assessor's office. And then, because I'm petty but efficient, I printed the side-by-side map comparison and taped it to the inside of my truck window, facing outward, right where she would see it on her morning inspection strolls. Around noon, I caught Karen, outside, looking at it. Her jaw clenched so hard I thought a dental emergency was imminent. She shouted across the property line, "This isn't over, Garrett." I smiled, calm, controlled. It never even started for me. I'm just building a house. Her eyes flashed something between rage and panic, the kind of panic someone feels when they realize their scheme has been spotted and documented. That afternoon, I sent everything, every map, every scanned brochure, every witness statement from confused residents, to a private cloud storage account and printed 2 hard copies, one for my records. One for the sheriff when I filed my formal complaint about fraudulent documentation and misuse of resident signatures. Karen thought she was playing Monopoly. I was playing chess, and I had just moved my queen into the center of the board. There's a kind of silence in the desert that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels alert, like the land itself is holding its breath, waiting to see what happens next. That night, the wind had stopped completely, and the only sound was the faint hum of the security lights buzzing over the half-built frame of my future living room. It was just past 2 in the morning when my phone vibrated on the nightstand. Not a call. Motion detected. Southeast perimeter. I sat up, instantly awake. The camera feed loaded slowly. Thanks, rural internet. But when it popped into focus, I saw it. A figure in a dark hoodie slipping past the fence line. No flashlight. No tools. Just moving with purpose, like he knew where he was going. My heart was pounding, but my mind was already in triage mode. I didn't grab a bat. I didn't yell. I didn't run out the front door like an idiot in a horror movie. I pulled up the camera grid and recorded the footage locally. Then I dialed the sheriff's non-emergency dispatch. But before I could finish the call, the glow started. Orange. Spreading. Fire. Jesus Christ, I muttered, already throwing on boots. I grabbed a fire extinguisher from the garage and sprinted across the yard as the flames licked up one of the stacked lumber piles near the foundation. The wind hadn't picked up yet, thank God, or the entire structure would have gone up. I managed to contain the worst of it before the fire truck arrived, but one of the concrete forms was scorched, and the temporary scaffolding on the west wall had melted into a sad puddle of twisted aluminum. The firefighters were professional and polite. One of them recognized me from a past inspection years ago. Small county, long memory. They took photos, made notes, and one of them pulled me aside while the others packed up. "Looks deliberate," he said. "No accelerant we can identify right now, but the placement's not random. Somebody wanted a message sent." Message received. Loud and flaming clear. The sheriff's deputy on duty showed up half an hour later. I gave him the footage. The grainy outline of the hooded figure entering from the back trail that led, surprise, directly to Karen's property line. He reviewed it, silent. Then he looked at me. "You recognize the build?" I hesitated. "Maybe." The truth was, I did. It wasn't Karen, too tall, too broad. But I remembered seeing that same posture, that weird off-balance limp, during the HOA meeting videos I'd browsed while researching her. Her daughter's husband, Eric something, listed as an independent contractor in the HOA's Community Improvement Fund. Guess I finally figured out what kind of improvements he specialized in. The deputy took my statement and promised they'd open a formal investigation. I asked if this could qualify as arson. He nodded slowly. If it's proven intentional, yeah. And since it's targeting an active construction site, that bumps it up a level. Could get nasty. I spent the rest of the night sitting in a folding chair under the scorched scaffolding, shotgun across my lap. Not because I expected a second act, but because I needed the message to go both ways. Karen didn't show her face the next morning, or the morning after that. By day 3, she'd gone silent in the neighborhood Facebook group. No more community alerts, no more polite venom under HOA letterheads. Even the joggers who normally passed by my site had stopped, like they didn't want to be caught in the fallout, which was smart. Because by that afternoon, I'd sent the entire packet of evidence, video, burn reports, back trail photos, everything, to a contact I still had at the county fire marshal's office. Then I uploaded a redacted version to my cloud drive titled, "In Case I Disappear. Open this." Paranoid, maybe. But I'd learned long ago, when people get desperate enough to lie with paper, the leap to fire and threats isn't far behind. Karen had crossed a line, and now she was playing defense. You'd think after a fire, things would slow down. They didn't. They just went deeper, quieter, more strategic. Karen vanished from the spotlight, but her machinery didn't stop. Flyers stopped showing up in mailboxes, but whispers started. The HOA was evaluating security improvements, exploring annexation options, and my personal favorite, responding to threats posed by rogue builders. Rogue. Like I was some kind of pirate pouring concrete on sacred land. I could have laughed, but I was too busy scanning old HOA budget reports. I hadn't originally planned on digging through their financials. Hell, I was trying to build a house, not run a forensic audit. But after the arson, everything changed. I had time, and I had motive, and I had a link. Mason, my son, casually mentioned that a guy named Mark, one of the board members, had liked one of our videos. Not just liked, shared it. That video was from the anonymous channel I'd started uploading to, under the title HOA Tactics, When Community Turns to Control. I hadn't expected it to get traction, I just wanted a record. So, when Mark Elderthon messaged me, from a throwaway Gmail account, I didn't hesitate. His message was short. "You're right. They're lying. I have files." We met in the back of a food truck parking lot on a Thursday afternoon, like two dudes making a low-budget spy thriller. He looked nervous, eyes darting around like HOA drones were going to swoop down and snatch him. "I can't do this for long," he said. "I'm probably screwed either way." "Not if we do it right," I replied. "You're not the one lying on county documents and sending goons in hoodies to torch construction sites." He slid a USB drive across the table. "That's the raw financials, unredacted. Karen's been pushing security improvements and legal initiatives through emergency budget votes. No member approvals, no meeting minutes. And the board's just going along with it? They don't even know half of it. She's been paying contractors directly, her daughter's husband, some ghost firms. I only caught it because the vendor names weren't consistent. Same billing address, but different LLCs. I clenched my jaw. That son of a bitch torched my scaffold. I'm sure of it. Mark glanced around again, lowering his voice. There's more. She's been funneling funds into something called Community Action Response Enhancement. Looks official, right? But it's just a shell. No tax ID, no registration. The checks are real, though. HOA checks. I stared at him. That's embezzlement. That's organized fraud. He slid over a second envelope. Printed emails, copies of budget proposals, one document titled Emergency Disbursement, External Legal Advocacy Fund, $14,800. The address it was mailed to, a P.O. box registered to Karen Loring. It hit me like a hammer to the chest. She wasn't just trying to muscle me out. She was using other people's money to do it. HOA dues, retired people's fixed incomes, monthly maintenance fees. All of it was getting siphoned to wage a private war against my right to build a damn house. I thanked Mark. He didn't ask for anything in return, just said, burn it all down, legally. That night, I got to work. The drive he gave me was a gold mine. I created a new folder in my evidence vault and labeled it Financial Misuse, Sun Mesa HOA. I drafted a report, detailed, cross-referenced, indexed, every transaction that didn't line up, every fake vendor, every check that connected to Karen's family or her ghost organizations. I included screenshots of public records, old newsletters, budget announcements, and receipts. Then I wrote a formal letter and sent it to the Arizona Department of Real Estate's HOA Dispute Division, the county auditor's office, and the local paper. I didn't sign it with my name. Yet. But I left enough breadcrumbs to make sure it wouldn't be ignored. By Monday morning, a request for independent audit had been logged against Sun Mesa Estates. By Tuesday, Karen's name had been flagged in the county's fraud watch system. And by Wednesday, I got a call from a sheriff's investigator. "I've seen the files," he said. "We're opening a broader case. You'll be contacted again." Meanwhile, Karen still hadn't resurfaced. The HOA Facebook group went dark. No posts. No comments, no replies. I kept building, I kept filming, and I kept printing every single receipt. I'd fought code violators, crooked contractors, and shady developers before, but this was new, personal, precise. Karen thought she had a board of loyal minions. She didn't know she had a spy. The summons came on a Thursday. Thick envelope, county seal, official, cold. Inside, a court date, a list of charges, and a subpoena for evidence related to fraudulent HOA boundary manipulation, misuse of community funds, and criminal misrepresentation. Karen was finally getting her day in court, and I was going to be there, front row, fully loaded. I spent that weekend preparing like it was a final exam. My files were already organized to within an inch of their lives. Folders by topic, subfolders by incident, file names time-stamped and cross-referenced. I printed everything twice, one for me, one for the county prosecutor, and placed them in two black leather cases I'd used during my years inspecting legal zoning disputes. I hadn't needed them since I retired. Felt good to dust them off. Court was held in the county municipal building, a beige box of bureaucracy with flickering fluorescent lights and an HVAC system that whined like it resented being born. I wore a charcoal gray suit and brought Mason with me. He wanted to see Karen get destroyed, his words. Julia stayed home. She hated courtrooms. Karen showed up in full damage control mode. Conservative pantsuit, pearl earrings, no makeup. She looked like a bank manager who'd just read the word audit for the first time. Her lawyer, a stiff man with the charisma of damp drywall, immediately tried to get the hearing postponed on procedural grounds. The judge, an older woman named Morales, who clearly didn't suffer fools, denied it. "We've waited long enough," she said flatly. "Let's begin." The prosecution opened with the basics. Karen had circulated false documents claiming my land fell within HOA jurisdiction. She had funded those efforts using HOA dues without proper authorization. She had falsified resident surveys, distributed misleading community alerts, and paid contractors, including her son-in-law, with HOA funds for activities unrelated to any approved board action. Then it was my turn. I stepped onto the witness stand with the confidence of a man who brought receipts. Because I had. Hundreds of them. I presented the original zoning maps from the county archive showing my property outside Sun Mesa Estates, Karen's edited version with falsified overlays, statements from 5 residents who'd signed her survey under false pretenses, the tri-fold mailers accusing me of illegal construction, featuring photos taken from her backyard, the HOA's internal budget showing payments to unregistered entities linked to Karen's family, the Community Action Response Enhancement slush fund with no legal identity, security footage of a man crossing from her property onto mine the night of the fire, testimony from Mark, who was sitting in the courtroom ready to testify against her. The moment Mark took the stand was electric. You could feel the shift. Up to that point, Karen still sat upright, composed, like she might wriggle her way out with some procedural dance. But when Mark said, under oath, "Ms. Loring presented herself as acting on behalf of the HOA board, but she never obtained our vote, and in several cases fabricated meeting notes to justify personal expenditures. It was like watching a dam burst. Her lawyer objected. Overruled. Mark went further, recounting the exact meeting where Karen had said, and I quote, "We'll box him in. The fire was a scare. If that doesn't work, we'll drag it through court until he runs out of steam or money." The prosecutor smiled like it was Christmas. Karen's lawyer tried damage control, suggesting that Karen acted with the community's best interests at heart and was merely protecting property values from disruptive development. The judge leaned forward. "Are you telling me the ends justify falsifying legal boundaries, misappropriating funds, and instigating vandalism?" He stuttered. She waved him off. Karen tried to speak, breaking protocol, claiming that I'd been aggressive, hostile, and dismissive of community harmony. The judge interrupted. "Ms. Loring, you are not on trial for his tone. You're on trial for your actions." The courtroom went dead silent. After a brief recess, Judge Morales returned and read her decision. "Ms. Loring is hereby found guilty of document falsification, financial misconduct, unlawful representation of HOA authority, and abuse of community trust. Additionally, pending the outcome of the criminal arson investigation, this court recommends temporary detention for obstruction." Karen's eyes finally broke. You could see it, the realization that her world had just collapsed. The sentence was brutal and beautiful. 7 years in county prison for financial and document fraud. $540,000 in restitution to be paid to me and the HOA Reserve Fund. Permanent ban from serving on any HOA board, real estate council, or zoning committee in the state of Arizona. She didn't cry. She just stood there, silent, as the bailiff took her gently by the arm and led her away. The doors clicked shut behind her. I sat back in the bench, exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. No cheering, no fist pumps, just quiet justice, and a faint smell of vindication in the air. The silence after a storm is never just silence. It hums. It carries weight. The morning after Karen was taken into custody, I stepped onto my porch with a cup of coffee and listened. No passive-aggressive raking noises from across the property line. No HOA walkers doing their neighborhood surveillance circuits. No mailboxes clunking open with new glossy propaganda. Just the wind, the creak of scaffolding, and a hawk screeching somewhere up on the ridge. It was over. Not everything. The build still had months to go. But the war, the harassment, the paperwork warfare, and backdoor sabotage. Karen Loring was gone, and the HOA that used to feel like a weaponized cult had suddenly turned into a headless puppet. Later that day, I got an email from the county clerk. The fraud audit had expanded, and Sun Mesa Estates was now under temporary external financial management. That meant every transaction would be overseen by an independent auditor, and no HOA funds could be spent without approval. 2 other board members had already resigned for personal reasons, and 3 more had been quietly interviewed by investigators. The HOA newsletter, now run by someone named Ron with the charisma of a DMV line, issued a limp apology. "We regret the recent disruption and will strive to rebuild trust in our community." No mention of me, of course. But the real surprise came in a plain white envelope a few days later, slid under my front gate. No return address, just a single-page handwritten note. "Mr. Blaine, thank you." Some of us never agreed with her. We were just too afraid to say it. You reminded this neighborhood what boundaries actually mean. A neighbor. There was no signature, but I didn't need one. Later that week, Mark came by the site. I hadn't seen him since court. He looked lighter, like someone had taken a 100-pound HOA off his chest. "You know," he said, leaning on a stack of drywall, "I nominated myself for interim board chair." I raised an eyebrow. "Didn't take you for a masochist." He laughed. "Someone's got to rebuild it. I figured if we start with transparency, we've got a shot." He wasn't wrong. With Karen gone, the neighborhood was in a weird kind of limbo, stunned, confused, unsure who to fear now that the queen was off the board. I wasn't part of the HOA, but that didn't stop residents from waving more, talking to my crew, even dropping off snacks. I think for the first time, they stopped seeing me as the outsider with the illegal house and started seeing me as the guy who stood his ground. Mark kept talking. "I'm going to propose dissolving some of the more insane aesthetic guidelines," he said. "No more stucco-only mandates. Let people live." I smiled into my coffee. "Welcome to the 21st century." He paused, then added, "I was also thinking, maybe you come talk to the board sometime, not as a member, as a guest. Tell them what it's like on the other side." I considered it, briefly. "No offense, Mark, but I'd rather finish this house and never see another HOA meeting again in my life." He grinned. "Fair enough." The following week, we passed our final structural inspection, framing, foundation, solar, all locked in. Julia ordered countertops. Mason picked a ceiling fan that looked like a jet turbine. Even the damn mailbox showed up ahead of schedule. And then, finally, I stood at the edge of my driveway and watched the sign installers drill holes into the base of a thick wooden post. The sign was custom, paid for out of pocket, burnished steel letters on a matte black background, private property. No HOA. No Karen neighbors laughed. A few even posed with it for selfies. It felt right. Not petty. Just honest. The war was over, the house was still going up, and for the first time in a long time it felt like I was home. It's strange how a place changes once you survive a war on it. When I first bought this land, it was raw and wide open, a blank page. By the time the final inspection was approved and the keys officially handed over, it felt like I'd written a goddamn epic on it. Not just with concrete and steel, but with blood, paperwork, and stubborn refusal to bend. Move-in day came with clear skies and no clipboard-wielding tyrants lurking nearby. Julia lit up when she saw the finished kitchen. Quartz counters, matte black appliances, light pouring in from the western glass wall like the room had been custom designed for morning peace. Mason naturally went straight to his room, threw himself onto the bed, and declared he wasn't leaving until his future kids did. I stood in the doorway for a long time after they disappeared into the house, looking out across the yard, across the desert, to the fence line where Karen once stood with her damned HOA binder. It all felt distant now, like a bad dream I could finally wake up from. Except this dream left a paper trail, a court record, and a few thousand views on YouTube. Oh yeah, the video, or rather, the documentary. Turns out, people love a good HOA horror story. When I uploaded the saga, redacted names at first, clean visuals, receipts on screen, the thing went viral faster than I expected. Comments flooded in. Why is this more gripping than any Netflix drama? Karen Loring is a Bond villain in capri pants. As a former HOA board member, this is my worst nightmare. Then the press picked it up. One of those independent documentary channels ran a 20-minute segment titled, "When Your Neighbor Was a Professional Inspector and You Tried to Fake the Law." I didn't make a cent off it, but I didn't care. It was never about fame. It was about truth. Karen, as far as I heard, tried to appeal her sentence. got laughed out of court. Word is she's serving her time in a minimum security prison near Tucson, where the only thing she gets to manage is her bunk rotation. Her daughter divorced the firebug husband. HOA residents held a special meeting and voted to restructure the entire charter, removing the clause that allowed unilateral emergency budget moves. They even hired an outside transparency officer. As for Mark, he stayed on as interim president long enough to dismantle the worst of the bylaws, then stepped down and returned to his real job as an accountant. He and I still grab coffee now and then. He tells me the new board actually listens to homeowners now. Imagine that. The sign at my front gate became something of a local landmark. Tourists driving through stop to take pictures. Private property. No Cho. No Karen, I don't mind. Hell, I've met some decent people that way. But the best moment, the one that really cemented it all, came one night after dinner, about 6 weeks after we moved in. Mason and I were sitting out back, watching the sunset over the ridge. The house glowed gold from the light bouncing off the concrete walls. He asked if he could have his friends over that weekend. Of course, I said. This is your home, too. He paused, then added, I'm glad you didn't back down, Dad. I know it got crazy, but it's kind of badass. I chuckled. Crazy comes with concrete, kid. Then Julia stepped out, handed me a beer, kissed the top of my head, and said, You built more than a house. And maybe I did. Maybe what I built, really built, was a reminder that your land is yours, your rights matter, and no artificial empire of bylaws and bullies gets to decide otherwise. Let them send letters. Let them print maps. Let them whisper in meetings and plot in binders. I'll be here, with my family, with my land, and with the knowledge that I stood my ground, and won.